Charles Robinson of Yahoo.
Yahoo.
He went on a local radio show, I believe, in Wisconsin yesterday and said the latest snag, actually put a fine point on the latest, would you call it a snag, or the reason why the Jets and the Packers have gone to their separate corners for the moment, is that the compensation that was on the table for Rodgers, that the Packers were willing to accept, and apparently the Jets, one would assume, talent evaluation team and general manager, potentially, one would think, was willing to accept, brought to Woody Johnson, the owner of the Jets, saying this is the latest, and Woody was the one who said no. And according to Charles, I thought it was a second-round pick, one of the two from Cleveland that the Jets have. The Jets have their own 43rd overall, and then one from Cleveland, 42nd overall, that they just acquired in a trade that involved Elijah Moore, the second-round choice from just a couple years ago that didn't pan out in New York for various reasons. And at any rate, I thought it would be one of those two that the Packers would have, and then a sliding scale of a choice in 2024 that could reach as high as a 1 if the Jets reach a certain level in the playoffs and if Rodgers is playing for him. But what came back, according to Charles Robinson, a third-round selection in this year's draft, and then a flat-out 1 in 2024. Whichever, doesn't matter where it is for the Jets, it belongs to Green Bay. First-round choice next year, and Woody Johnson said no. And according to Charles Robinson, the reason why Woody said no is he heard Rodgers on McAfee's show talking about how prior to going into his darkness retreat, said he was, in his mind, 90% retired. And that caused Woody to reject a first-round selection in this trade in 2024. Because what if Rodgers plays 1 year and then all of a sudden has that 90% feeling again? How can we guarantee that he's going to play in 2024 if he left 2022 going into 2023 thinking that's it? And then he needed to spend time with himself and his thoughts. And as Rodgers said on Pat's show on that day, which is over a month ago, if I'm not mistaken. I think that date was March 13th, right around then, a month ago, where he said he spent some time thinking about retiring, and then he spent an entire day thinking about playing, and he came back out and he thought, I'm going to play, and then reached for his phone and checked back in with civilization only to see that the Packers were shopping him, which is a notion that Brian Gutekunst pushed back on at the owners' meeting. And if all of this is in fact the case, and whenever I say that, it does sound like I'm questioning the reporting, and Charles is a terrific reporter. So I'm not questioning it. I do have to just basically come out and say, since Rodgers says most of everything that's been reported about him is nonsense, to the point where there's now a new T-shirt that Schefter is, I guess, wearing around town saying, lose my number. And so if this is in fact the case, I say, way to go, Woody. Stand firm. Hold, as I said from Braveheart. Hold. Yes, sir. Hold. Because he's not wrong. And part of his concern isn't just Rodgers saying 90% retired. His concern is, look at the Denver Broncos. And they traded all those picks for a quarterback that had such a disastrous first year with them. The team that traded him away is choosing 5th overall in this draft. That's how bad a season Russ had. And they had to bounce their coach. And to remind him of that situation, all he's got to do is look within the room at one of the guys telling him, let's bring in Rodgers. The offensive coordinator was the coach.
Yeah.
So there's an actual personal, physical, human embodiment of how poorly the last huge-ass trade involving, the most recent one involving a quarterback that's on the hook for tens of millions of dollars, hundreds potentially. Now, Sean Payton has been brought in, and one hopes for Denver's sake and for Russ's sake that it was just a bad brew and mix roster, new coach, quarterback, and new place. It was such a bad brew that it can be fixed, and it will be worth the squeeze for the Broncos orange to have made that trade. But if you're Woody Johnson, you're like, okay, so let me get this right. We're going to trade draft capital this year, third, second, what have you. Okay, cool with that. But the next year is definitely a 1. No matter what Rodgers does this year, no matter if Rodgers plays next year, it's a 1 no matter what. Hell yeah, I would say to my general manager and everyone else, there's the drawing board. Go back to it. Go back to it. Because I know Woody wants to make a splash. He has said it. And I know Woody wants Aaron Rodgers. For sure. I'm sure he's been thinking about it since the Super Bowl, since right around then, since the season ended. Is it possible to get Rodgers? Can we make a splash? They didn't even, I mean, they kicked the tires on Derek Carr and told him he could be a Hall of Famer coming here, but I think Carr and everyone else will tell you they were targeting Aaron Rodgers from jump. But I totally understand the Jets not doing that. And I'm not sitting here as a fan saying, just do it, Woody. We're so desperate. It's been so terrible for 50 years. By the way, I think I just imitated myself with that doofus voice.
Yeah, man. That's what you've been saying.
I might have just done that to myself. I might have doofus to myself. Well, I'm not sitting here saying that. Would you give up a 1 no matter what with Rodgers? No. Of course not.
No. But
for next year. I wouldn't give up a 1 for him this year, and I wouldn't give up a 1 for him next year. I would give up a 1 for him next year if he plays and they reach the divisional round. Right? Because at least you know if he reaches the divisional round, that means that they're the 1 seed right off the bat. Probably not the case. Or they've made the playoffs and they won a game, which I would think would leave Rodgers with such a positive vibe that he would, if he emerges from the season successfully, professionally and personally, the experience in New York City was so successful to that tune, he would come back if his body feels that way. But he said himself he had to go through a week's worth of workouts to see how he feels.
Yeah. You'd want the guarantee that he's going to play the 2 years. I mean, that would be worth the first round.
But how can he guarantee you that? He cannot guarantee you that.
Right.
How does he feel physically, mentally? I mean, it's a friggin' grind that he's gone through. It's 20 years.
Oh, mentally, he said that he was 90% retired.
Right. He admitted that he needed to go through a process. He needed to work out. Who knew that when he went on McAfee's show, the first blush reaction to so many in this industry was, well, he just blew it for the Jets because he just gave all the leverage to the Packers. And who knew that his comments on McAfee's show roosted in New York in this manner? That's what's holding it up right now. And I don't blame Woody Johnson for thinking that. Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.